Hello and welcome to the meeting room. I'm James Lancaster.
And I'm Paul Harvey.
And today we're talking about overtourism, business tourism, and the psychic income, and what, if anything, links those three ideas. So, Paul, from Kyoto to Venice, Barcelona to the Isle of Skye, Ibiza to the Norfolk Broads, residents everywhere seem to be in revolt against what they see as excessive tourism, too many people coming and spoiling where they live. I think in the extreme cases it is having an impact on local services, water resources, the cost of rental properties, housing. But tourism has been a thing for a long time. Why do you think all this pressure is mounting now? Is it just we're living in a world of more and more people?
I think essentially that might be the crux of the matter. I think you can go down deeper into it than that, though, and I think we will. It's quite interesting. You've seen in the Balearic Islands, which is obviously Majorca, Minorca, and Ibiza, Spanish islands. Thank you. I did geography A level. So in the Balearics, there have been some protests in the last couple of weeks, and it's been mounting for a while, but there were 10,000 people on the streets of Palma, which is the capital of Majorca, just protesting about over-tourism. They blocked the beaches, and it was just a way of saying, look, if the beaches are full, no one can come here, and it's not pleasant. And it's just showing the impact of over-tourism. And on Minorca as well, I mean, there's a village on Minorca called Binnabecavel. Binnabecavel. Okay. And there's about 200 people in this village. It's a gorgeous village. It looks like it's just picture perfect. You know, it's white walls, blue skies, and everyone goes there with their cameras, Instagram, and there's 800,000 people go there a year. 800,000 people go there a year to a village of 200 people, and it's got to the point where the villagers have said, right, we're going to chain off these streets that you want to take pictures of, basically overnight. So they're only open from 11 till 8 o'clock at night, and that's one way that they've been dealing with the problem of
kind of
tourism.
Guerrilla action, though, isn't it? That's kind of are they allowed to just chain off these? I mean,
well, they have been doing.
Whether they're allowed to or not.
I think it's a way of starting the debate. You know, kind of like people are gonna talk about it a bit more, and then they'll come up with some kind of
because these are islands like the Balearics that rely on tourism. So presumably they're not thinking we don't want any tourism. It's just we need to get this back in balance because something's gone wrong. And I guess things aren't helping. Instagram's not helping. Social media, where it's all about the immediate photograph, not very deep tourism, just very shallow levels of tourism. I guess it's never been easier either, has it, to book a holiday?
Absolutely not, no. I mean, if you think about 20 years ago, you had to go to the travel agent on the high street. I mean, what are those two things now? But these days, you just literally go online. You can book an entire bespoke holiday package in less than an hour.
Yeah.
And so, and then you go along and you take your picture and you put it online and you show everyone where you've been. Yeah. And
I guess if you look around the world, there are burgeoning middle classes in China, India, Latin America. So, us Westerners, we can't really take our bat home about this. We've been doing this for ages, going around on package holidays on buses, and
absolutely. But I was thinking about this, and if you look at the generational change, for example, my granny, she was born in the 20s. She never left the UK. Whereas my parents, born in the 50s, they go on holiday a bit more. Me, born in the 1980s, I've traveled. I've lost count of the number of flights I've been on already this year. I mean,
I think there is a baby boomer generation that of this kind of retired wealthy, though, who you see it in the UK, whether it's a bank holiday or a school holiday, they don't seem to care. They're in their caravans clogging up the road. Why do they do that, by the way? They're retired, they can go whenever they like. But so they've got a lot of things coming into play, haven't you? You've got an affluent retired generation, you've got burgeoning middle classes around the world, you've got just more people, and you've got the technology which is making it easier and easier and easier to fly around the world.
I was in Florence last week, which is one of the destinations that suffers from over-tourism, and I was there and we were staying for a week. It was a leisure holiday, and we were staying in someone's Airbnb apartment which belonged to someone who'd previously lived there, but then they moved out of Florence and they were renting it out to us. And you kind of think, like we were trudging around the streets, kind of, because it's so full. Like the streets are small, obviously, in Florence. We're trudging around and kind of thinking, are we the problem here?
It's always somebody else is always the problem, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like when you're on a motorway, stuck in a huge traffic jam, you're sort of cursing at other people. You never think that you're the problem.
It's like, well, exactly. It's like, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. You're not stuck in traffic. You are traffic.
Yeah, a bit of self-awareness, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess it's interesting from a business events perspective to see how this plays out 5-10 years down the line. If this is going to become a problem, a bigger and bigger problem, how does business events, I'm talking international meetings and conferences where sometimes tens of thousands of people land in the city, how do they stay out of this argument? Will they be able to? It's interesting. I think there are already signs of big conferences having a bit of pushback.
Well, it's interesting, actually, because, there's a very recent example, so Mexico City, it's on the brink of a water crisis at the moment because of a huge drought. And there's 8.8 million people are expected to be without water. Now, there's a huge football summit. The World Football Summit has just held a congress there for 1,200 delegates. Is that a responsible thing to do? Delegates and organisers, they're going to be met with resentment from locals about them using the precious water, essentially.
Yeah, I think this ties into the whole sustainability conversation as well, doesn't it? I think if there is going to be antagonism against large, super large, 1,200 is not that big, relatively speaking. Some medical conferences have 30, 40,000 delegates. It will be along those lines. It will be along the lines of water shortage, infrastructure, getting people around city centres that are already feeling packed. I guess this goes back to the whole conversation around where does the meetings and events industry position itself.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation that's been going on for ages. Traditionally, in the UK at least, and in Europe, it sits under tourism.
Yeah.
So the convention bureaus, destination marketing organisations sit under that tourism umbrella.
And when we talk to government, it's always we talk to the tourism minister. It doesn't quite make sense in a way. It's strange.
No, and this is why people are trying. You've got sort of the Joint Meetings Industry Council and the Iceberg and various other organisations trying to kind of wrest the meetings and events industry away from tourism and position it under business development or economic development. But, at the end of the day, it's who pays your wages. And at the moment in the UK and Europe, it's tourism. And in the US, a lot of the venues and a lot of the DMOs are funded by hotel taxes and tourism taxes. So it's going to take quite an effort, I think, to remove business and events from that tourism umbrella. And let's face it, delegates do, end up going on holiday for another couple of days. Or
the whole bleisure.
Yeah. But there are post and pre-fam, post and pre-congress trips, aren't there, all the time? So, it's slightly disingenuous to say that there isn't a link. There is a link.
Yeah. There's also the aspect of maybe business tourism delegates being a slightly more valuable kind of tourist, as it were.
Low impact, high value.
Yeah, that's it.
The idea that they're worth...
Because delegates spend 3 times more than leisure tourists.
Yeah.
And so maybe some of that can go back into the local community.
Well, if it does go back...
the ecosystems.
Yeah, if it does go back, that would be justification, wouldn't it? If the money that's raised from these valuable tourists does go back. But how... it's difficult to know how that would work. Because when they come up with these figures, they're talking about taxi journeys, eating in expensive restaurants. I guess that is one argument for a hotel or visitor tax, because it's ring fenced. You go to your hotel and it's in the invoice at the end. So that can be ring fenced for local services.
Yeah.
But this is all interesting. The reason we're talking about this is because there was a interesting feature in the last issue of AMI about the psychic income.
Oh, yeah.
Which sounds like a sort of wellness pyramid scheme or something, but it's this idea, and it comes from America, that large events, when they take place in a city, give a sort of feel-good factor to the local residents, and that's actually worth something. The kind of excitement of hosting a big event, some of the infrastructure, the developments that come out of hosting a big event, that's quantifiable, and it's called the psychic income.
Okay.
So
it sounds kind of related to legacy, but not quite. Is that right?
It sounds like, it's quite nebulous concept in a way. It's kind of like it's guessing how people feel about it. So I guess it's like kind of wellness economy. How well do your residents feel about themselves? It's a kind of alternative to GDP almost in a way.
I can think of specific examples of events that have been held. Like, for example, I was living in London during the 2012 Olympics, and there was a genuine kind of feel-good factor around the city during that time. And more recently, I was up in Liverpool last year for Eurovision, and that was incredible. And they had all the banners up, and there was a proper kind of party atmosphere all around the city. But there was a genuine pride in the city that they were hosting that event.
There's a woman called Dr. Emma Delaney who works at Surrey University in the UK, and she's doing some research into this. She's trying to research if large international conferences have the same effect, basically, of large sporting events or big pop concerts. I think the problem there is, does anybody know that the International Association of blah, blah, blah is meeting in your home city? Unless CVBs actually promote it, no one's going to know. But I remember when I lived in Brighton, driving past the Brighton Centre, and that occasionally there'd be something like that on the board outside the Brighton Centre.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an international conference. And it does give you a sense of pride that they're choosing your city.
They got the little flags up, and you can see where people have come from, and it's like all these top kind of academics or whoever have come to your city. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I think so. And so if that can be proven to be a thing, the psychic income, then that might be another kind of cause for justification for the business events industry, if it needs justifying. We always have this conversation.
Yeah, that is a different conversation.
Yeah, it is. If you're going to prove a psychic income, you do need the CVBs on board, the DMOs on board, and the people who are actually organising the events on board as well.
And do you need to open up the events themselves or the venues to the wider community and get people in and involve them in, because coming back to Florence, I was reading, because there's the Accademia, which is the museum where Michelangelo's David is, and obviously that's the most famous sculpture in the world, basically, and everyone goes there to go and take a picture or a selfie of themselves with David. And I was reading an interview with the director of that museum, and she was basically saying to kind of reconnect the museum with the residents of Florence. They were putting on free events, and they open up the museum for free the first Sunday of every month, and they're basically trying to re-establish that connection between the museum and the city. And maybe if, I don't know, venues could do a similar thing.
Yeah, well, you've seen International Association conferences do that. So medical conferences, particularly sort of cardiology or thrombosis or whatever, they will have sessions in local primary schools. They'll do kind of workshops, and they'll have kind of mobile heart monitor stations and all that kind of thing. So they do try and get that kind of public interaction. Otherwise, these conferences go into a box in the middle of a city. Everyone talks for 3 days and then disappears, and there's no lasting tangible benefit. But that, I think, would definitely play into the psychic income. Yeah, I think that would help prove it, at least. Yeah. So I think we'll have to leave it there, Paul, because we've come full circle and there's nowhere else to go. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.